I started kickboxing when I was about 10. I took being Jewish for granted, and I never took learning Hebrew or my Jewish studies seriously until I left the community. It is the same reason I quit kickboxing. I took my safety, security, and comfort for granted. I strongly believe it should be mandatory education for children. People who train self-defense don't get into fights. 1.5 million years of human history, and we've had 100 years of what we call democratic free society. We don't actually understand there's a world outside of our democratic free societies where we can joke about whatever we want with friends at dinner. Whether we like it or not, we are ambassadors for the Jewish people in Israel, whichever room we walk into. But after my travels, after October the 7th, I felt I wasn't doing enough. I felt a further responsibility to use my voice and started going to anti-Israel rallies in London, often wearing a keffiyeh and interviewing the protesters.
Some people talk about courage. Sammy Yahood lives it. In a world where Jews are told to keep their heads down, to speak softly, to blend in, Sammy does the opposite. He stands tall. He says what needs to be said, even when it seems to make people feel uncomfortable, especially when it makes people feel uncomfortable. He is not here to be liked. He is here to tell the truth. And that's exactly what he did when he sat down with the Chicago Jewish Alliance for Jew and Stew. What followed was raw, unscripted, and impossible to forget. A conversation about Jewish pride, Zionism, and refusing to surrender an inch to the people who want us gone. This is not just an interview, it's a masterclass in living without fear. Have a listen. Well, Sammy, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Jew and Stew. We thought it would be such a great opportunity to introduce you to our community here in the States, in Chicago. We kind of wanted to know a little bit about yourself and what you do in Jewish advocacy and really why you do it.
Thank you, Daniel. Simona, it's a pleasure. First of all, I've left this information out until we started recording this podcast, but I'm flying to the States and spending 5 weeks touring the States and speaking to as many people and inspiring as many people as possible. So on that note, let's get on to what I do and why I do it. I was born and raised in London. I was completely surrounded by the Jewish community. I don't think I had any friends or anything past acquaintances that weren't Jewish, which is a very privileged way to grow up. But also you lack the reality check, the wider society understanding. Fast forward to 2023, I did 6 months of traveling around the world. I went to places like Egypt and Jordan and Mexico. I spent a bit of time in Texas and parts of America, which was fun. But I really got perspective on just how fragile our free societies are. Free society is such a tiny proportion of human history. 1.5 million years of human history, and we've had 100 years of what we call democratic free society. It's not even a drop in the bucket. And we take things so for granted to the point where we don't actually understand there's a world outside of our democratic free societies where we can joke about whatever we want with friends at dinner. I sat with Muslim families for dinner in Egypt, and they refused to talk about any sort of politics, anything that could potentially get them in trouble or potentially disagree with the government, because they are so worried that even their own family members would snitch on them and get them sent away and never seen again. And that's actually, even today, that's more the norm than our so-called free democratic societies. And so it was a real reality check, even in Mexico, where they have much different problems, but it's one of my favorite cultures because they're so happy with so little, the Mexicans, and they celebrate death, Dia de los Muertos. You go to a cemetery there, and often them they're like rainbows. Every single grave is a different neon color, and it just made me realize that the Western perspective is so broken. The perspective on life and the purpose of life and our responsibilities in ourselves, in our families, and society is so upside down. I made Aliyah in November.
Very recent.
Yeah, by which point I'd already been doing my social media work for just over a year. After I finished my traveling, 2 weeks later, I got out of Egypt. 2 weeks later, October the 7th happened. I was already spending time volunteering in the community in London, teaching self-defense and security. There's a really great charity organization in the UK that provides that for the Jewish community. And
you teach Krav Maga, right?
I do. I teach self-defense.
Yeah, you're a Krav Maga instructor. When did you learn Krav Maga?
I started kickboxing when I was about 10, but for the same reasons I took being Jewish for granted, and I never took learning Hebrew or my Jewish studies seriously until I left the community. Distance makes the heart grow stronger. It's the same reason I quit kickboxing. I took my safety, security, and comfort for granted. And you fast forward a little bit. I strongly believe it should be mandatory education for children. People who train self-defense don't get into fights.
Right.
They sure as shit don't start fights.
Just really quick, Simona and I could relate a lot to, and we'll get back to October 7th, can relate a lot to that insulation. We grew up in Chicago in a place called the North Shore, where it's very Jewish. And so for both of us, I think, and Simona, to add an extra layer on that, can speak to, she comes from the Soviet Union. So our Jewish identity, we also took for granted just because it was, where I come from, it was a little bit more reform. Judaism is kind of where our demographics are like, but similar story. It wasn't until later on in life did I really come to my Jewish identity and really understand it and understand how important it was to protect myself and my family, So
yes, I grew up in the Soviet Union, so my parents weren't really connected or allowed to practice their Judaism and didn't know how to pass that on to me when we came to the United States because they didn't grow up with it. And for me, two things happened. One, I had kids and I wanted it to be, part of their lives. And two, I realized at a certain point that you can be Jewish and completely ignorant, but you walk into a room and all of that walks in with you. And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict walks into that room with you, and people have thoughts and judgments and ideas about what that means. And if you are not educated and grounded in your own identity at that point, then you're at the loss there. You need you don't have that privilege as a Jew anymore to just not to be ignorant about any of this. So
off of what you said, Simona, whether we like it or not, we are ambassadors for the Jewish people in Israel, whichever room we walk into. And I realized that very quickly when I left the bubble. So I took up self-defense and educating myself. But after my travels, after October the 7th, I felt I wasn't doing enough. Everyone had this feeling. Everyone felt like they had to do something, even if it was something like posting a few stories on their Instagram or whatever, something small. I felt like I still wasn't doing enough, teaching self-defense, doing security, etc. So I felt a further responsibility to use my voice, and the fact that I'm not afraid of these people that act so terrifying, and started going to anti-Israel rallies in London, often wearing a keffiyeh and interviewing the protesters. But honestly, it was pretty naive.
Wait. How did it feel the first time you put the keffiyeh on to do this? How did your body react?
I had 3 keffiyehs. I had 3 keffiyehs already before the war. I bought one in Egypt, one in Jordan, and one in Jerusalem. So I was prepared.
It's different because I feel like they didn't mean what they mean now. Before the war, they didn't mean this.
This is true. The white and black one. I don't wear anymore, and I rarely wear the other two. But the white and black one, I mean, it's always had this meaning to the jihadis, the symbol of Palestinian resistance. But yeah, I'll never wear it again properly.
So what did you find out when you first went in there? What was the sobering conclusion you saw, Sammy?
I mentioned it was naive. I went there thinking I can use my voice and my little bit of education and knowledge to have a discourse with these people, to maybe plant a seed in their mind. They'll go home and they'll think, the Jews aren't really that bad. Come on. There's 2 types of people pretty much at these rallies. There's 2 types of people. You have the Islamists and you have the useful idiot leftists. the ones who attach their heart to everything and they think they're doing the right thing. And somewhere in between, you have Jew hatred / ignorance, but it's so, the output is not worth, the input is not worth the output. And what I mean by that is it's not worth the effort and the time it takes to go and educate individuals one by one, or to make them look ignorant by sticking a mic under their nose. Like, yeah, maybe that'll get me clicks, but who is it helping? I'm not changing the world that way. And yes, I can try and change the world one by one, but it's not worth the input. It's not worth the stress. So I realized very quickly, in fact, I think after the first visit, because of all the feedback I got on my content, I'm inspiring the Jewish people. I'm inspiring people who value free society and are paralyzed by what we're facing. And that's what I want to focus on. That's my true aim and focus for my speaking tour. I want to give people perspective. And I think I've had quite a unique timeline of perspective, including the traveling right up until October the 7th. And then literally a year after October the 7th, making Aliyah.
I've heard you describe yourself as a Maccabee leading from the front. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That actually leads on perfectly from what I just said, because I'm not going to waste my time focusing on changing people's minds. Yes, there's people that do that, and I do think a lot of their work is great, but it's about inspiring. I want to. Some I think a boxing coach once said to me, "Step into the fire because the fire is not as hot as you think it is." If you try when you're fighting and you're sparring and you're moving back and forth, if you're constantly flinching and moving back, you're going to get hit. If you move forward, you're less likely to get hit. So almost taking some of that mindset and trying to show people that it's not scary. These people are at these rallies because they are the weakest type of individual, pretty much as a rule. Like, I went in and woke up these Palestine so-called encampments.
Well, they're not working. We know that.
Well, there you go.
Well,
they're getting paid pretty well, I'd say, from some Middle Eastern investors. But what I would say is, you go to these anti-Israel jihadi encampments at the universities, and you've got just they're nothing short of lumps of individuals. These people I can't imagine, like, you look at them and you think, what goes on when this person is staring at themselves in the bathroom mirror? Like, I do not want to be a fly on the wall in their house. These people are the weakest of the weakest of the weak. Everyone from your childhood bully, because he was bullied by his dad or not loved by his mum, or all the way up to Adolf Hitler. The weakest of the weak. And if it's left unchallenged, we will end up with Adolf Hitler again.
It's like that stoic, great men make good men that make weak men, and so be great.
Good men create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and hard times create strong men. So we are on the cusp of the hard times created by weak men.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We kind of have a similar, first of all, that is completely right about the opposition. I think a lot of times what happens is there's a fear among us and our allies about the opposition. And Chicago Jewish Alliance also likes to lead from the front. I think our origin stories are kind of similar too. We started because I went to City Hall when the mayor of Chicago was passing a resolution for Gaza, this virtue signaling that has nothing to do with one of the most crime-infected cities in all of America. And my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. On my mom's side, they were partisans fighters. So they ran to the forest and, killed Nazis and made a life in the forest.
Like the Bielski brothers?
That's where they were, with the Belsky Brigade.
No.
Yeah, brother. So It's in my blood. So although I feel a fiduciary duty to the next generation of Jews to do this, it's also been an ancestral calling. So when I heard about this virtue signaling by our mayor, I draped an Israeli flag on me. I put an APB out to some friends, or in this WhatsApp group I started after October 7th. 4 of us showed up. And it was 1,000. I don't even want to say pro-Palestinians because, it's like you're describing. It was like 70%.
We're giving them legitimacy. They're anti-Israel jihadis.
Exactly.
I always have to stop myself. It's not a Palestine protest.
Right.
Yeah, they don't care about the actual citizens living there or the Palestinians at all. It's not about that. It never has been.
Even Kanye West came out the other day and said, these guys don't care about Palestine. How hilarious is that?
I try not to give that man any air. I just,
It's crazy.
Well, we're I'm from Chicago. I also grew up with him. And that, what's crazy? This is allegoric to the Jewish experience. 15 million Jews. Kanye West has 32 million followers on Twitter. So meaning like when anti-Semitism is spouted, people don't realize how effective it is because, even if half of Kanye's followers listen to him, that's as many Jews as there are in the world, right? So, and that was also
everything.
Yeah.
That's everything,
Right.
because we have to understand just how special we are. Even if you don't believe that we're the chosen people or you don't believe in the Torah or whatever, we have to understand that we are insanely disproportionately successful. We support ourselves. We support one another. When you meet a Jew, I met one of my closest friends on a flight from Monterrey to Oaxaca in Mexico. The only two gringos on the flight, me, he sat in front. He's speaking to the air hostess about where to go and eat, and she recommends a restaurant, and he says, how am I going to tell them how I got there? And she said, mention that to the head chef. His name is Israel. And I couldn't even see his face because I'm sat behind him, but I just felt him light up. So I'm like, that's a Yid, that's a Yahudi. I'm going to speak to him. And I spent 5 days in Mexico with him. We have this connection. As soon as two strangers find out that they're both Jewish, there's this barrier of trust that just no longer exists, that exists with every other type of human being. It would almost be weirder if we weren't hated.
You mentioned Yahood, which is the name you use, which means Jew in Arabic. How did you decide to use an Arabic word to represent yourself?
A number of reasons, really. They all kind of come together. My grandma was born and raised in Alexandria. Her family are all Syrian and Egyptian Jews. I visited Egypt twice in 2023, spent quite a lot of time there, as well as Jordan. I also understood where this all comes from, and it's Islamic fundamentalism. It's Islam. There's no two ways about it. So that was it, really. You want to say it like it's a bad thing? I'll take it.
Interesting.
Flip that narrative.
So you made a disguise and went into this group of people, but the content that I see is you coming up as a Jew to these encampments. And so what changed in your content there?
Like I said, after the first visit to one of these hate marches, I realized I'm not going to the impact I'm going to have, or significant impact, is not going to be changing people's minds. That's my biggest problem with Hasbara. Everyone's heard Hasbara. It's like the PR front of Israel or the Jewish people. It's bollocks. It's bullshit. That was the British side of me coming out. It's Hasbara. The word Hasbara comes from le'asbir, to explain. Why are we explaining ourselves? This is why the Jews actually deserve to live. No, we need to fight.
How do you feel about the word Zionism too? I've been hearing that too. It's like this.
But
Zionism,
it's been demonized. It's been demonized.
Well, even the word,
object.
I mean, even the word, the philosophical notion of the Jewish people, it's not Zionism anymore. Israel exists. It's not this, you know what I mean? Like conceding words.
Well,
so
I really
Zionism,
hate the word anti-Semitism. I really hate the word anti-Semitism.
Right,
Zionism is not a word Zionism is not a word I have a problem with. And I think it does. I see your point for sure. And I've thought about this before. I think I was just speaking to a friend earlier, because my career is actually in construction and real estate, and my dream would be to develop the Negev, to build communities where Olim, who have hesitancies about making Aliyah, maybe they don't speak the language, they don't know whether they'd assimilate in a community. We build entire communities, and that's my dream. That's one of my dreams. We were speaking about it. We forgot what Ben Gurion said. Ben Gurion said that we were going to make the desert bloom, and we've been caught up in our perpetual wars. Unfortunately, which is understandable. And we've done insanely great things and sent a man to space. We're inspirational, but we've almost stopped and we're stagnating. We are stagnating. So Zionism is, I think it's always a thing, especially when you speak to the diaspora and you witness and hear the level of comfort they have as visitors and guests in foreign lands, which is what they are. You're not a British Jew. You're a Jew living in Britain. What is so unclear about that? I really don't understand. It drives me crazy. And the irony is I actually had an argument surrounding this a few years ago at the Seder table on Passover with my family, talking about the story of the Jews, the Jewish people leaving Egypt, leaving slavery. And you're trying to tell me it's just some book that we follow. It's not just some book. It's our blood.
Yeah, I mean, even if it is some book, though, it's literally talking about how the Jews were in this land and, and the Arabs colonized it. I mean, it's a history book, too. So even if you don't believe in the theology of it, okay, great. But archaeologists have found remnants now of the Torah that hasn't been changed for thousands of years, word for word.
Even you look at the Arch of Titus in Rome, you can see the images of the menorah being taken out of our temple. There's so much record kept. I went to Luxor in the south of Egypt. I think it is the south. And there's a temple that I don't remember the name of the temple, but each group of people which they took slaves, they recorded. And they didn't just record them, they recorded the city or the province where they took them from and example images of what their facial structure was like. And obviously you had Africans and you had Jews or Canaanites. It was so evident, obviously, which one's which. You could spot the Jews. Let's just say that. And it was unequivocal evidence. The Muslim tour guide that we had pointed out to where the Jews were shown, carved into stone in these millennia old temples.
Did you make it evident or that you were Jewish when you were in Egypt on this tour? I know I have friends that have traveled through Egypt and women friends and who had to feel like they had to hide their Jewish identity traveling through Egypt recently.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would go to Egypt if I was a woman personally, but as a Jew, I did hide it until I felt comfortable with the people I was with, and like I mentioned earlier, that they don't ever talk about politics because they're worried they're going to just get picked up by the government and never seen again. That has an element of, I don't really care if you're a Jew. The only image I have of a Jew, when you say that you're a Jew, is the preconceptions I have from. They throw the word Yahood around the dinner table like British people say twat. Yeah, you're a twat. No, they throw it around like it's just a regular cuss or whatever you guys say.
Yeah, yeah.
They do, but for the most part, they've got their own problems. They've got their own focuses in life. They're not actually bothered. They don't care. Even in Jordan, this would maybe not so advisable, but I told her I was staying with a Bedouin family, and they showed me videos of them firing AK-47s into the air for weddings, and I told them I was Jewish at some point subsequently. But they were chill. They were really cool. It was really cool. I actually played. There's an Eyal Golan song in which it mixes Hebrew and Arabic, and he plays this really famous, I think it's actually originally Yemenite section, a very famous Arabic song. And the hijabi Bedouin girls in Jordan were dancing to it, to Eyal Golan.
That's awesome.
I feel like the Bedouins know how to have a good time. Like the times I've hung out with Bedouins, it's always been a wonderful time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so you're in Israel during the bombing with Iran, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what's that juxtaposition like of getting there and being in the middle of war?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I'm in a building of entirely Israelis, maybe one Russian family. I got to meet everyone in my building in the bomb shelter underground, which was nice. I have to say it was scary at parts. There were times when the building shook, and that's something landing 20-minute walk away. That's not close. I guess relatively it is, because they're intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are about 10 meters long. But that whole time and before we had this little thing with Iran, and after, I'm still more afraid for the diaspora than I am for people in Israel. I am so much more. We understand what is important in life here in Israel. We understand, and I think it's all to do with the fact that we face this existential threat. It's not natural to live through these dreamlike enormous phases of peace. It's not natural. Human history is just brutal, and we don't understand. Like, if we just walked out into the jungle, which is right next to our built-up skyscraper Amazon Prime city, we walk out into the jungle, everything is trying to kill us.
Right.
Including from the sun to the snakes, like everything is trying to kill us, all the berries that you thought you could eat. We have no idea how good we have it. And in Israel, we do, to a certain degree. Yes, there's privilege. Yes, there's TikTok kids. Yes, there's, you know what I mean? But we have the fundamental understanding that life is short, and that's been lost in the West.
I hear this from Israelis constantly. Like, we're looking at you and being like, how you guys doing over there? And they're like, we're fine. How you guys? We see what's happening with you. Like, we see what's happening in Chicago and London and everything. And we constantly hear that there's more concern for us in the diaspora. I spoke to a woman yesterday who lives like half-time in Chicago, half-time in Israel, because she's made Aliyah, but her husband hasn't. And she was there for the bombings. And she said it was actually kind of a privilege because she witnessed so many miracles happen when the bombings were happening.
The care home that was evacuated the night before, the hospital wing that was evacuated the night before, doesn't make sense. I've stopped believing in coincidences. I'm not a religious man. I've stopped believing in coincidences since I moved to Israel. I've definitely become more spiritual, that's for sure.
It's amazing.
Do you think Jews need to stay in the diaspora and be that be on that line, or do you think we should all come to Israel? Because like I just know like America is just such a big ally for Israel, and to me that's very important, is to make sure that I infuse like the honest narrative of what Israel is even in Chicago, where it's like almost the fighting grounds for this Jewish advocacy on the front lines. I mean, we have per ratio the highest pro-Palestinian population in America, right? Isn't that Simona? Something along to those.
We have one of the highest Palestinian populations in America. We have about 85,000 people in Chicago who consider themselves Palestinian, and about 500,000 Muslim people in Chicagoland who are usually supportive of the Palestinian cause. So yeah, it's a high percentage.
And so we find ourselves demonized, right, in the diaspora, and we're not around allies. And so, and you know that living in England more than anyone, but what are your thoughts on that? Because we really, we want to know, like you're a man who went back to Israel, who is a fighter, and we want to fight for our people. What do you think about this?
So let's unpack that. There's a lot. So I'm sure you've seen my message includes Aliyah now, Jews to Judea now. It, like what Jabotinsky said, liquidate the diaspora before the diaspora liquidates you, all of those things. That said, we have a responsibility and a sizable stake in the United States of America. If we cannot wake up Americans, and it's the Americans' responsibility too, not just ours, they suffer from the same paralyzing comforts that we do. And that leads to the suicidal empathy that we see with Islam. How much hasbara do you think it's going to take to convert an Islamist? It's enough to make it doubly not worth the time. Our comforts have made us be like, oh, but it's not all Muslims. It doesn't matter. In the UK, this is a fact. More British Muslims with British citizenship, have left and joined ISIS than joined the British armed forces.
Say that one more time.
More Muslims with British citizenship have left to go to Syria to fight for ISIS than have fought for the British armed forces. It's crazy, and we're still listening to these politicians who we know don't act in our best interests. You guys have to count your blessings. You almost ended up with another suicidal administration. It was this close. It's not done. The fight is not over just because Trump's got into office. You're lucky. You're basically the only free society that has a leader fighting for that free society. I don't, unless you want to talk about Viktor Orban and the Israeli, and he is going to have some real trouble. I was in Hungary the other week, excuse me, and it's amazing. But they have a lot of leftism in the youth. But let me get back onto topic. Our comforts have allowed us to become suicidally empathetic for people who literally say, we want to kill you. And maybe it's not all Muslims. Like I said, I stayed with Muslims in Egypt and Jordan. But it doesn't matter. It's the same way it doesn't matter, this silent majority, this silent majority, that. Do you think all of Nazi Germany hated the Jews? Do you think half of Nazi Germany hated the Jews? No. I don't.
Their own Pew Research, Sam Harris does great work on this, where he basically will, ask different people in different Muslim countries what they agree or disagree with. It's like 80% in England believe in, these crazy fundamentalist ideas that contradict that of the West, and they bring that to the West.
Over 50% of the Muslims living in Britain are sympathetic with Hamas. That's the ones that will admit it. Yeah, but we have to bear in mind that there is a reality in Islam, or an idea in Islam called taqiyya, where you're allowed to lie, you're allowed to break your own religious laws to further Islam. We have the mayor of London is called Sadiq Khan. He is a full-blown Islamist. He denies all of the atrocities that go on in England, all committed by Muslim gangs, and acts like he doesn't know what people are talking about when they ask him. Yeah, we're dealing with a never seen before version of colonization, and it will go from nothing to the most brutal conflict that anyone in the West has ever seen, overnight, and it will. So to answer your question, Europe is done for the Jews, and it has been for a while. We're just waiting for that night. America, you got guns. You got a leader who's fighting for the country for the next couple of years, and then he's fighting to win the next election. And you have a massive silent population that is very proud to be American, but is so comfortable, so complacent. And I would say, if you're not careful, you'll be gaslit into submission, just like the British population. It's been a very careful and long, drawn-out process of teaching the British people to trust the media. And at this point, it's pretty much well known that the BBC are just jihadi sympathizers. But that's been the case for years. And I only figured it out 3-4 years ago. It's been the case for years.
Can you explain something to me? I'm always having a hard time understanding about England. And I see often that if a crime is committed, they don't release the identity because it's a protected class. And I remember this was happening, there was a man who walked into a preschool and stabbed a bunch of 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And
this guy recently, this was he went into a Taylor Swift concert and stabbed 3 8-year-old girls to death.
Oh my God.
And they said he was...
I think that was a separate incident. This man walked into a preschool, and then there was rioting that happened right afterwards too.
No, that's you're talking about the same thing. It was the guy who went to a Taylor Swift dance party in the north of England. It was at a dance
school.
That's right. It was a dance party. I think 3 or 4 8 or 9-year-old girls died, and they not only did they not release his name. Yes, he's 17. Yeah, but they said he was born in Cardiff. The kid was. He was first of all, he had jihadi propaganda with him. Second of all, it's just they know what they're doing. You often don't have to lie. You just have to conceal the truth. And the media know what they're doing. It's been a long time since the media actually was there to report on what's going on. It's been a long, long time. You guys know that with CNN and all of these crazy networks that just straight up, it's all clicks. It's all about being first. And it's all about working for the highest bidder. I mean, you've got Sky News in Britain, which is now majority shareholder Qatar. You've got British Airways, majority shareholder Qatar. Our biggest supermarkets, Sainsbury's, Qatar. Qatar own more assets in London than the Crown.
It's wild.
That is a wild thought.
It's wild.
Well,
we see this with the news because like the news articles will be about us and we've been there, and then we read what they wrote and it's like, wow, you missed some very big key details or facts when you wrote this article. Like this is completely out of context the way it's written.
You don't have to lie to mislead people. So with the horrendous event that you mentioned, let's use another example. Let's say that there was a car ramming terrorist attack. If it was a white guy, they'd say, man plows into a crowd of people and kills in terrorist attack. If it's a Muslim, they'd say van. They change the
the narrative.
Person. They say a car collides with crowd. Sort of thing.
Right.
It's not it's a terrible incident when the guy's called Muhammad.
It's more than the media. Like my understanding is it's legally there's like protected classes of people and you can't release information when
well they're trying to implement blasphemy laws. They're doing some crazy things in the UK. I don't feel safe going back. I've announced to my platform I will not go back. They
like to visit even?
I can't do it.
No, you will not go home to visit.
Prison systems are completely run by Islamists. Not run, but controlled. As in, if I go to prison for what I've said, which many hundreds of people have been in the last couple of years, it's basically a death sentence if I get put into prison. There's child molesters that convert to save their own skin. That's the level I'm talking about here. And in the UK, they recently changed what's called the government prevent guidelines. So it's guidelines for law enforcement and stuff like that behind what is considered far-right terrorist ideology. Yeah. And that includes the belief that, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically this, the belief that Western culture and society is under threat from foreign illegal migration and uncontrolled migration. Basically, that sentence and that belief system is considered far-right terrorism. I can't go back. I have on my Instagram videos of me saying Islam is a murderous ideology and it's not compatible with Western society, which is a fact.
Yeah, I mean, what's amazing too is Islamic empires have been trying to conquer Europe for thousands of years. And when they finally did, it was with hugs and warm embraces and plane tickets and hotel rooms. And so, yeah, I understand. So back to my question about being in the diaspora, like, so we correct the record here in Chicago. Like, for example, CARE, which is a Islamic It's a law firm here, I believe, and they basically just did a hit piece on us. And what they were able to do, one of their interns is also an editorial at this magazine called the Chicago Monitor, and basically they just espoused lies about us and about the Jewish people and about Zionists. And sometimes we feel like in the diaspora, maybe America is one of the last battlefronts. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty grim sounding in Europe, but
I was just going to say CARE is the Council of American Islamic Relations, and anytime they get wind that we're going to show up to a school board meeting or a city hall meeting or anything, they attempt to mobilize against us. And it's kind of funny, like these two CARE lawyers were at a school board meeting, and we're very transparent when we come in to these situations and saying the community has asked us to be here. We're not necessarily like in district. They'll come in and they'll give an address in district pretending they live there. Like it's the deception.
They lie.
They lie constantly. I actually looked up one of the addresses. Both lawyers gave the address. So I was like, I'm going to look up this address. I look it up. It was a Islamic community center that they were claiming was their home address to prove that they were in district. But yeah, they're out for Danny right now is what's happening. This one guy who shows up all the time, and you have to see this guy, Sammy. Like your social media would go nuts for him. He shows up in a cuffy jogger suit Like it's all keffiyeh pattern, but it's like a tailored like joggers and a shirt, but like it's just
It's their
bananas.
whole identity. When you have society, in everything I talk about, I circle back to this point because, and this will be the main focus of my speaking tour. When you have society that is so grossly comfortable, not only do you start being empathetic towards people who want to kill you, like you said, this colonization is going to happen with hugs and hotel rooms. You get to this point where people and humans need adversity and difficulty. You can't appreciate the happiness without the sadness, right? You can't appreciate the sunny days without the rainy days. We live in societies which are molded around comfort and comfortability. Straight after World War II, the drive-through came out and it was finished. Yeah. If we mold society, no, drive-through is in McDonald's drive-through in America in the 50s. Yeah. As soon as that happened, it's like everything is molded around how can I make things easier, which is great, but that's assuming humans are actually able to be like, hold on, I actually need to put myself through adversity. And it seems to be the tiny minority that actually is able to do that.
Your insight for this comes from your discipline and your work ethic too, I believe. So, I really do. Yeah, I agree completely that when you're coddled, you don't even know any better. So we started this conversation that we all were coddled. So we all know what it's like to be in that ecosystem and then be pulled out and actually be sobered by the realities of, like you said, the animal kingdom, human nature, etc. You know?
You talk about going into these groups and these people at these hate mobs. How coddled do you have to be to be sitting there screaming about tearing down the free democracy that you have the privilege to live in?
How rich is your dad that you can be a socialist?
So let's expand on that. Let's expand on that. We are, at the end of the day, we're clumps of cells. Yeah, we forget that we're animals. The only thing that sets us apart is basically written language, which means we can pass on information. It's basically the only thing that's, and opposable thumbs. It's really not that crazy, our intelligence levels compared to other species. What is crazy is that we have allowed ourselves to get into this state where we avoid any sort of difficulty as if it's a bad thing. I always like to think of things, how did we evolve to be? I used to work an office job. Did we evolve to sit down for 3 hours at a time and lean over like this at a desk? Why is my back, my neck, and my wrist hurting? And I take that view on everything in life. So when you see these people, we're affirming mental health disorders, and we are telling people that, who knows, all of these ideas that are very clearly now, I think most people who are listening to this podcast now see that most of these crazy progressive ideas are all this one big thing that's this Trojan horse to take down Western society. How did it get let in? Because we have zero, the level of gratitude in society is basically at zero because we don't understand difficulty. If you don't understand pain, you can't understand what it's like not to be in pain. So these kids that dye their hair blue and that attach their entire identity to Palestine, which doesn't exist, yeah, they attach their identity to this struggle because they're screaming for help and for someone to notice them, because they have never felt any sort of gratitude. They've never, and they feel this pain because their chemical imbalance is just, I don't even want to know, but it's causing explosions inside them. When you exercise, you ground your body. Your body, the next day it's hurting and it's telling you that pain is not a bad pain. And everyone who's exercised and lifted weights or gone for a run knows that pain is a pain that's telling you you've tested yourself, not you've injured yourself. It's not like I bumped my head pain. It's I'm building. And it's essential. Everything from exercise to meditation to heat and cold exposure. I do ice baths and sauna. We are supposed to put ourselves through what's called positive forms of stress to be able to think clearly.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a child who just turned 12, and this is something we always have to work on because it's interesting how adverse to discomfort children are, or how adverse to doing anything difficult. And I feel like, this needs to be taught to children, that you don't just walk away or avoid things because they're hard, and that you're not good at them. And that, like his worst thing right now is being bored. Like being bored is like the worst thing in the world. And I just think about when that goes unchecked and you grow into an adult, is how you end up at these like mobs where you don't have an identity and you need to attach something to yourself to make you feel like you're valid and contributing to this world in some way. And yeah, that's what we're seeing.
Spot on. And you know what? I have ADHD myself. So as a kid, I didn't want to focus on anything that didn't interest me. So I was moving a lot. I was moving around, exercising when I should have been revising, that sort of thing. But we're manufacturing ADHD for ourselves as adults, and especially for our kids. Screens melt brain cells, especially when like your brain is like elastic until you're about 20, 25. And if you're creating these 5-second attention spans, that's going to stick.
Yeah. Like the boredom. Like I wonder, like when I was growing up, I was bored and there was no screen and I just had to sit in that boredom. I wonder if it's a bad thing that, now it's so interesting. They don't get bored because they could go onto a screen. That is so interesting. I didn't think about kids don't.
It's not that they don't get bored. It's like they see it as like the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Because they never are. They're so stimuli. There's stimuli everywhere.
And it's something to be avoided, where I think like putting yourself in those positions where you are bored and you get to be more introspective and actually, take time to process what's going on in your own head is so important and valid. And that is no longer happening. Like our society just doesn't
people are too afraid of their own thoughts now because they don't have, and it's the same reason why people are, like I said, the 5-second attention spans. That's why no one's actually reading or listening to proper information anymore. They're getting 5-second TikTok videos, 30 seconds if you're lucky, if you can keep them engaged that long. And that's the level of information that people get. So when you have these fragile individuals, I like to define the extreme left and the extreme right as one. The extreme left is thinking only with their heart, and the extreme right is thinking only with their head. Yeah. When you think, in my personal life, if I thought only with my heart, I'd get heartbroken all the time. If I thought only with my head, I'd break other people's hearts all the time. And in politics, that's like, who cares about the homeless people on the right? And on the left, it's like, let's just give everyone free houses and see how that works. These are extreme examples. But when you have people who only think with their heart, and you need both to make a society work, yeah? When you have people who only think with their heart, they are open to weaponization. You show them a picture of a dead child. It doesn't matter if that dead child is in Malaysia or Australia. If they say free Palestine under the photo, you are the Nazi because you don't agree. It's as simple as that.
I think that ultimately most people are centrist and, combine the heart and the head. But what happened here in the United States, I feel like, is if you take a Democrat from 20 years ago, somebody who was leftist and a Democrat, and brought them to today, they would be considered a conservative. So I think those goalposts have drastically moved.
Because exactly, I think every rational thinker, every rational thinker is somewhere around the middle of that spectrum, right? And in our everyday lives, not just politically, we have to think with our head and our heart. It's like when you're getting into a new relationship or whatever it is. So it's essential, and it's the same with politics. But when you get people that are driven further and further towards the extremes, when you get these people who only think with their hearts, they are no longer capable of hearing facts or information. So if I was to say to someone that Palestine was never a state, they wouldn't hear me. They would just feel pain. They wouldn't actually hear
an emotional response, right?
Exactly, because it's attacking, like you said, Simona, the fabric of who they are as a human being. They've attached their entire identity to this thing, because it doesn't matter about facts. If you attach your emotion to something, it is.
Right. Like, even that is so interesting, because if you attach emotionally, you don't think about it. So even if we needed to defeat the Nazis in Germany and bomb Dresden and have civilians unfortunately die, which nobody wants, we had to stop the Nazis from taking over the world. So if you attached yourself emotionally just to dead children and not seen the macro issue, you don't understand it logically because you're only digesting 3-minute clips. But if you stayed for the 4th minute, you might learn something else. But, we don't have that long formatted kind of. That's why podcasts are so great. And that's why, Sammy, we wanted to have you on today. And I really think we learned a lot, really. I think there's something to being strong physically, spiritually, emotionally, and really like emboldened in your identity, because it's contagious, and you've been contagious. And we're so excited for your American tour, and we'll try to get you to come here to Chicago. That would be epic.
It would be an honor to visit you guys. Thank you. It's been great to be on this episode. Let me finish with one last thing. First of all, you said the physical strength. There is no such thing. I don't believe in the ability to achieve true mental strength and clarity and satisfaction without having some sort of putting yourself through physical strain, even if it's just walking really fast. Like you go to train stations and most people don't walk up the escalator. That kind of just sums up society. I like to think if you're the one who walks up, you're putting yourself in the 1% in society just by doing that. But I'm going to finish with one sort of idea, and that is and I struggle to remember who I took this off because it's not my idea. Your kindness is not virtuous if you're not capable of violence, right? So you can be kind all the time. Like the example you used with bombing Dresden and Hamburg. Yeah, you can be kind all the time, but who does it help? Look what the Nazis are doing. Look what they plan on doing. Your kindness to these civilians, which probably voted the Nazis in the first place, who does that help? Your kindness seems virtuous until you encounter evil, right? So your kindness can get you everywhere, all the way. You can get you the best job. It can get you the best girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever, right up until you encounter Islamic Jihad and Hamas, who don't care. They don't even care that you're a Muslim. They don't even care about supposedly their own people. As soon as you encounter evil, you better hope you're capable of violence. And the people that are capable of violence and are kind, they're the most virtuous people. They are the people who are most ready for danger and for what's coming in society. And to take it back to the diaspora question, we have a responsibility in the United States of America, not one that's shared in Europe. We've been betrayed by Europe, not just us, but Europeans have been betrayed by Europe. And if America doesn't learn from it, they will certainly fall to the same fate. We have to fight with everything. Everyone needs to take responsibility. And that's the message I'm going to be spewing to as many ears as that will listen.
Amazing. Sammy, thank you so much for being here today. We can't wait for you to continue your great lectures and come to America. And thank you for being just so contagious. Like I said, I found your content and it just seemed like so much synergy with what we're doing in Chicago. Just be unapologetic Jewish and loving our culture and not being afraid to share it. Simona, do you have any closing thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to you coming so we get to hang out and chat more. This has been just a really enlightening conversation, and we're so glad you came and joined us today.
I appreciate you guys. I cannot wait. I'll be in America between October the 7th and November the 12th. Yeah. I'll be coming during the middle of Sukkot. And I'm starting in New York, and I hope to do Chicago, Minneapolis, Kansas, DC, then head to LA, then head back to Miami, and from Miami head back to Israel. But please give me a follow, Sammy Yahood, on all platforms. And it's been an absolute pleasure, guys.
Amazing, Sammy. Thanks so much again.
Cheers. Peace through strength.
Well, that was Sammy Yahood, a man who reminds us that comfort never made anybody courageous. That real strength, physical, spiritual, and emotional, is built through resistance, through showing up when it's hard, through choosing to fight when it would be easier to fade out. In a world trying to dim the Jewish pride, Sammy doesn't whisper. He doesn't apologize. He shows up and he speaks out loud. For London, for the Diaspora, and soon, for Chicago. Huge thanks to my co-host Simona for bringing her brilliance as always. We're just getting started. Stick with Jew and Stew. Stay strong, stay proud, and we'll see you next time. Follow the Chicago Jewish Alliance to stay in the loop and subscribe to this podcast so you can see what's coming next. We're going to have speakers that represent the entire spectrum of the Jewish community, from philosophical thinkers, from soldiers, people on the front lines of advocacy work on universities. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.